Alright, welcome to our next Unity 6 tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be enhancing our 2D platformer by building complete health systems from scratch. Because of everything that's going to be covered, this might be broken up into 2 or 3 parts. We'll kind of see as we go along. But in this first of maybe 3 videos, we're going to be adding some damaging objects. We're going to be creating a health system. We're going to detect when the player's hit and hopefully damage the player at least in this video. In the second video, we're going to be covering displaying the UI, creating a small invincibility frame so the player has a small bit of protection when he's hit, a knockback effect, and then player death animations and triggering that so that the level restarts. Now, before I get started, in the last video when we were creating this level here, using the art in the tile map, right, tutorial, which was the last video, there were a bit of issues with these gold piles here. When we sliced them, it removed some of the pixels because of where the square boundaries were. So what I went ahead and did is just took them back to their normal state, so if we go over to environments and click on treasure hoard, go to PNG, click on gold. I went and put it back to sprite mode. Actually, I'll probably change this to point and then press apply, just so that both of these aren't as blurry. There we go. I left the pixels at 16 so it fit size-wise in comparison with the rest of the level, but making it a single sprite was actually better in this instance, so I left it as such. Just goes to show that you really need to actually look at the sprites you're using. Some of them, even though it looks like a good idea, if it's not working out, then don't mess with it, right? I'm not saying ignore it, but I'm saying in our case with the sprites, then what we need to do is actually, for the most part, leave the sprite mode alone. We didn't need to slice them or anything like that. That actually messed them up. So all we need to do is just change the pixels per unit, and then the point and then the filter mode, which I did just now, and now I have these gold piles that fit in with the level, right? Alright, let's get into it. So what we're going to do is in our folder that says Sunnyland, right, we're going to be clicking on props, and we're going to use this spikes right here, okay? Yours will probably say 100. Alright, so if it does, then just come up here in the inspector, pixels per unit, and change it to 16. Make sure the filter mode is not bilinear but is set to point, and press apply. And when we drag this out here, we're going to see it right there. Alright, now the way it draws it, because it's on default, it's actually kind of behind the ground tiles. That's kind of fine. The other option you could do is you could go ahead and just put it on the foreground. Since they're spikes, I mean, as long as they're a little bit high up, then it's still going to look like they're coming up out of the ground. It's only going to kind of look bad if you start having them like right here, right? If you're doing spikes that sink into the ground and then pop up like over a time period, right, then you're going to want to have them on like the default layer, or create a second layer that's up above the foreground layer, separate layer that's up above the foreground layer. But for us, the spikes are going to be static, so they can stay right there. Alright, now that all long thing is out of the way, let's go ahead and add some stuff to our spikes. Alright, with our spikes selected, we're going to go ahead and press add component. Go ahead and search up collider. Right, so in your search bar, type in collider. We're going to want this second one, box collider 2D. Now if we zoom in, we're going to see that if the player jumps on it, if we press play as it is, the player can't interact with it. Well, the player can jump on it, but then you see that happening, right? So that's not what we want. But if we turn it off, what we can do is we want the player to look like they're sinking down a little bit. So what I did was I clicked on this edit collider here, and then let me undo it real quick. All right, you have this option here that says edit collider. Okay, press this button here and you're gonna see some vertices pop up, and then we can just drag that down here. That'll give it a little bit of impression that the player is sinking into the spikes when he gets hurt, so it's actually like poking him versus just something that he can stand on, and eventually he says, oh, ow. The next thing we want is we want to turn this collider into a trigger. So we're going to press is trigger. This is going to prevent it from thinking that he's not on the ground, and then that jump loop that he was stuck in, right? So now, boom, right? And then before we get into code, let's go ahead and go up here to player. Up here in the inspector where it says tag, let's go ahead and change that. So click on untag, and you're going to see this option that says player here. These are some built-in tags, and just like the layers next to it on the right, you can create your own, but we're going to want this player tag selected for our player. And while we're here, let's go ahead and click on overrides and press apply all. Alright, back into our spikes. Let's start creating some code, shall we? Let's go into scripts, right click, create, find mono behavior script. If you haven't been following a tutorial and this is your first time checking out the videos, I want to invite you to check out the whole series and start it from scratch. But if this is just what you're looking for, then go ahead and you haven't created any scripts yet, come down here to scripting. Easy thing, just choose mono behavior script. Okay, so right click, create mono behavior script. We're gonna name this damage object, and close that, double click it to open it. There we go. And delete all this stuff in between. We don't need any of that nonsense. It's not nonsense, we just don't need it. What we're gonna do though is create our own function. So we're gonna say private void on trigger enter 2D. So we're gonna check to see if the player enters the trigger. Okay. It gives you this default name of collision. Most people tend to just put other. In this instance, you can leave it the same, but I'm gonna go ahead and put other. If we're gonna check to see, if other. See, I almost typed in a collision. And we're gonna compare the tag. We're telling the code to look at the tag and see if the other object that's colliding with it, so in this case the player, has the tag player spelled just like that. If you create your own tags, make sure that you spell them in the code exactly how they're spelled and how you create the tag. Okay, otherwise it's not going to be able to find it and it's not going to work. So what we're going to do is look for player control, because I don't know how to spell controller apparently, and I typed in player control in the code, and we're going to name that variable player. We're going to make that equal to collision or other dot get component, and then we're going to end that player control component. Sorry, fat fingered. There we go. Boom. We're gonna get their component, so that script player control. We're gonna say if the player is not equal to null, so if it finds a player then it's going to do a thing. And for now, we're going to type in 2 lines. The first line is going to be what's going to work. So debug.log. We're going to type in ouch. So this is going to print in the console window the word ouch with an exclamation point, which will show us that this is working, right? Which means that when the player interacts with the spike, it's going to work. We're going to put in a couple backslashes, so that's the question mark button, right, on your keyboard. And then we're going to type in player.take damage transform.position. Alright. What this will do eventually when we get to it is it's going to pass the spike's position to the take damage function to calculate the knockback direction. And again, we don't have that function in the player yet, so that's kind of like a placeholder. That way I don't have to go back later on and just retype everything. I can just delete these 2 backslashes. Alright, let's go ahead and press Ctrl S to save your code. Go ahead and bring up your Unity on our spikes. Let's go ahead and wait for this to compile. With spikes selected, let's go ahead and test it out and drag over the game damage object and press play. And I should have switched it to the console window, but if you look down here, it says ouch. If we click on console, it says ouch. So now we know it's working. Perfect. That's what we wanted. And on to the next thing, our health system. Alright, so what we're going to do is create a couple of different things. We need to let's go ahead and create a game manager while we're here. So right click in your hierarchy, create an empty object, and game manager. Since we're going to be reusing that, let's go ahead and drop that into our prefabs. That way it's already ready to go, and we just need to update it as we add things to it. Let's click on scripts and create a mono behavior script, and this is going to be called health manager. There we go. Had to make sure that I spelled it right. All right, open up your script, and you see all this right here. For this, we're going to be needing to use Unity. So up here in line 2, right under using Unity Engine, I'm going to type in using Unity. I want to say engine.scene management is the one. And then I might need those later, so I'm not going to delete those. But I am going to press enter underneath that last curly bracket. And I'm going to create, actually no, I'm not, my bad. Let's go up here and create a variable public integer health is equal to 3. Alright, and now here we're going to create a function public void take damage. This isn't the one we're using for the player, so don't worry. But this one's going to say health minus minus, and it's going to be if health is less than 0. Actually, no. We'll say less than or equal to 0. There we go. And then we're going to press this, and we're going to tell it to restart the level by saying scene manager dot load scene. And in this, what we want to get is let's see, scene manager dot get active scene dot build index. Alright, you don't like this part because I forgot that one opening parentheses. So there we go. Alright, let's go ahead and press save. And so here's what happens. Health is going to track the player's current health. We're starting here with 3 in this case, okay? An integer because we want whole numbers. We don't want decimals, so I'm messing with that. This take damage is going to decrease the health and prevent it from going below 0 by adding this equals, right? Or rather, it's looking to see if it's less than or equal to 0. If I wanted to, I could add an extra bit of code up here and make it equal to 0 regardless of whether it's at 0 or less than. But we're just going to do this. It's just an easier way of doing it. And then if the health reaches 0, or when it reaches this less than or equal to 0 part, then we're going to call the scene manager and restart the active scene in the build index, okay? Which will simulate the player death. Alright, now we need to get the player to recognize when it's been hit. So let's minimize that and go ahead and add our health manager to our game manager. There we go. And open up our player control script. And we're going to add some variables at the top. So let's go up to the top. And where do I want to put it? I'll put it here just because of my incessant need for organization. We'll put it there actually no, we won't. You can put it anywhere at the top. For me, I'm gonna put it here underneath the movement settings. I'm gonna add a header. Player stats. There we go. And this is gonna be private health manager. Manager. There we go. And then private bool is invin. How do you spell it? AINVINCIBL. Just kept wanting to put. We're gonna make this equal to false. I kept wanting to put invisible for a second there, so it's messing me up. But it's not. It's invincible. That's what we need. All right. In our awake function, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say health manager equals, and we're gonna look for the object. So find object of type health manager. And next we're gonna create our own take damage function in here. So underneath the update, underneath all this, and underneath jump is fine. We're gonna create a function and call it public void take damage. And this is gonna be passing a vector 3 called hit position. Actually, for now, no, not for now. We'll do that later when we get to the invincibility part. What we are going to do though is run health manager dot take damage. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to check to see. What we're going to eventually is we're going to need to check to see if the player is invincible. Right now we're not. We just set up that variable, that Boolean variable, right? But for now, what the code is going to do is it's just going to run this right here. Okay, so that's what that's gonna do. Now let's go ahead and test it out. Make sure it saves, so press Control S. Press Control S. There we go. And minimize. And what we're gonna do is, player control is already on there. I'm going to click on the game manager because I kind of want that to see. That should drop down is what we're looking for. So, and it didn't for some reason. It is working. Oh, you know why? I know why. In our health manager, we didn't, not our health manager, damage object, we didn't. So go to your play it damage object script and then delete those comments lines. Now it should work. Errors, what? No overload method for take damage. It shouldn't. Oh, it does. It does. Okay, that's why. Because I chose not to do that part. And so let's go ahead and we'll just add this vector 3 real quick. I'm gonna call it hit position. That's what we'll call it for now. And now that should clear up the error, question mark. And it does, so we're good. All right, apparently we're using some obsolete stuff. But it should be fine, hopefully. And it does. There you go. See, look here at the health manager. All right, now it's not gonna work when it gets to, oh, it did. It did. I didn't think it was gonna work because I didn't put it in the build, but it worked, and there you go. So we got that part working. It's damaging the player. So we're at about 22 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this first part here. But what we did in this is we added a damage an object that damages it, the spike, right? We created a small little health system. We detected or started creating the health system. We got to add the UI and stuff to it and get all that connected. We had the player detect when it's hit using triggers, and then we got it to damage and reduce the health as we see here, and it restarts the level as it should. Okay, in the next video we're gonna hopefully cover the rest of it, which will be the health UI, which there's some nice little cherry assets that we're going to use. Instead of hearts, do things a little differently. We're going to create some invincibility. That way when the player gets hit, it keeps them from continuously getting hit repeatedly. It gives them a little bit of reprieve, some breathing room. We're going to attempt to make a knockback effect, and then we're going to do some player death animations before the level restarts. Alright, so I will see you all in the next video.